Welcome everybody. This is Emma Contolini, and I think she has a really great message to share with you guys today, so go ahead.
And Emma asked me if I would pray for her before I speak, so if you guys could just bow your heads with me. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for Emma and her heart for women and children and people in general, God. I pray that you'll give her the confidence and the strength that she needs to get through this speech. She knows what she's doing. I pray that you'll remind her of that. I pray that the audience would walk away with something from her message because she has worked so diligently this year. I pray, God, that you would give her a peace of mind and a peace of spirit, and that her words would be your words, God. Amen.
Right, so pardon my voice, I'm actually kind of sick, so just going to go with it. All right. Henry Nouwen was a Catholic priest, author, professor, and theologian. He once wrote an allegory to compare life after death with life after delivery, and it went like this. In a mother's womb were two babies. The first baby asked the other, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" The second baby replied, "Why, of course. There has to be something after delivery. Maybe we're here to prepare ourselves for what we will be later." The second baby replied, "Nonsense. There is no life after delivery. What would that life be?" "I don't know, but maybe we'll walk with our legs and eat from our mouths." The doubting baby laughed. "This is ridiculous. Walking is impossible, and eating from our mouths, absurd. Life after delivery is to be excluded because the umbilical cord is too short." The second baby held his ground. "Well, I think there is something, and maybe it's different than it is here." The first baby replied, "No one has ever come back from delivery. Delivery is the end of life, and the after delivery is nothing but anxiety and darkness, and it takes us nowhere." The second baby held his ground. "Well, I think there is something, and maybe it's different than it is here. Certainly we will see Mother, and she will take care of us." The first baby replied, "You believe in Mother? Where is she now?" The second baby calmly and patiently tried to explain. "She is all around us, and it is in her that we live. Without her, there would not be this world." "But I don't see her, so it's only logical that she doesn't exist." To which the other replied, "Sometimes when you're in silence, you can hear her. You can perceive her. I believe there is a reality after delivery, and we're here to prepare ourselves for that reality when it comes." Nouwen's analogy struck me deeply the first time I read it because it addressed my greatest fear, death, with one of my greatest joys, babies. Now, before I continue, you should probably know two things about me. First, I'm passionate about my Catholic faith, and second, I love babies. Gabe likes to say that if there's a baby in a room, it'll take Emma less than 5 minutes to find it. And it's funny, but it's actually quite true. Between ages 3 and 12, my sister and I played with dozens of baby dolls. We'd take them to Mass, bring them to school, etc. Then, when I was 5, we adopted my youngest brother from Guatemala, and I loved being an older sister to a baby brother again. When I turned 7, my mom got pregnant unexpectedly, and my sister and I thought it would be a good idea to announce the whole news to the neighborhood. It wasn't a good idea. Unfortunately, my mom lost the baby at about 12 weeks, and while that is still one of the hardest things that has ever happened to me, it revealed a lot about who I was. Not only did it allow me the opportunity to prove to myself that I was stronger than I believed, but it caused me to consider nursing for the first time. Finally, just before I turned 13, my family decided to foster a baby who we nicknamed Little Buddy for 9 months. Not surprisingly, I took it upon myself to feed and change him, and I even offered to be woken up in the middle of the night if my parents didn't want to. Thank goodness they never woke me up. It ended up being a rather painful experience because his mom manipulated our generosity, and so for our own well-being, we had to relinquish control of the baby's situation and future. But I saw once again the tender heart I have for children and infants. That authentic love is a part of who I am, and it can't be replaced. And it's the biggest reason for why I chose to study midwifery and nursing for my Capstone experience. These anecdotes are significant to my bigger story because they reveal a lot about who I am. Coming into this year, especially after hearing all the horror stories of Capstone from friends who graduated last year, I made sure it would be focused on something that I was truly passionate about, because I knew if I researched anything but what I loved most, this assignment would become just another thing to check off my list of a million things to do, and I really didn't want that. So for obvious reasons, which I've previously explained, I decided to pursue nursing, but particularly helping moms and babies. I wanted to pursue this particular field of healthcare because I had a desire to help build the culture of life back into the medical field and reverse the mentality that life isn't worth saving or living. Unfortunately, in our modern culture today, death is seen as a righteous escape, and life isn't given the dignity it deserves. St. John Paul the Great once said that the church counters the culture of death with the culture of love. This is why I'm motivated to pursue nursing despite the secular opinions that are so prevalent in the nursing culture today, like euthanasia, assisted suicide, and abortion. I want to live this command out well by following St. Paul's exhortation in Romans 12:12, which says to rejoice in hope, be patient in tribulation, and be constant in prayer. And that brings me here. So to jumpstart this experience, last November I interviewed a certified nurse midwife named Maria, who explained to me exactly who a midwife was and what they do. A midwife is a nurse who specializes in caring for expectant moms and newborns, particularly prenatal and postpartum care. They take the place of a gynecologist during a delivery, which makes them the person who catches the baby once the baby is born. In particular, her comment about how midwifery is the best way she can live out her missionary call really resonated with me. She continued, "Right now I feel like modern culture is kind of a war all the time, and I feel like I get to live out my faith with fear and trembling in the world of reproductive health." Her remark finally made me accept a truth I had been disbelieving for quite some time. For some reason, I had the irrational fear that God didn't create or consider my loves and desires when He decided what I was called to do. Consequently, I didn't trust people when they told me that living out Christ's calling for my life goes hand in hand with doing what I love most. And this caused me a lot of fear. But Maria finally shook me awake to the reality that God asks all of us to serve Him in different ways according to our own unique talents. I had ignorantly believed that missionaries needed to work in third world countries or open orphanages, but Maria taught me that we can all be missionaries no matter where we live. Consequently, this meant that working as a midwife could be just as beautiful as opening an orphanage. Coming from a woman who spent 6 years living and working in Mexico, Belize, Guatemala, the Philippines, Spain, India, Peru, and Haiti, I knew that she was telling me the truth. I became so excited for what's to come and all the opportunities I'll have to welcome new life into the world. Maria also mentioned how midwifery is not about your feelings, and it's just never about you. This hit me hard. After my interview with Maria, prior to our conversation, I had painted midwifery as a field which I would love and that would feed me as an individual. But now I see midwifery in a new light. It will be wonderful and beautiful because I will get to help welcome new life in the world and live fully alive while helping women and babies who are exhausted and vulnerable. After my interview with Maria and lots of time in prayer, I firmly believe that I can live this vocation out through midwifery. Jesus proclaims in Matthew 20:26-27, that it shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be your slave. This paralleled perfectly with the ultimate vocation Christ has called me to, marriage and motherhood. Just like when a patient will miscarry and I'll have to be the strong one to sacrifice my feelings in a moment where their world is falling apart, so too will motherhood require the same self-sacrifice and selflessness. Suddenly, this Capstone experience became much more than just a research project regarding the nursing profession, but about motherhood and selflessness too. Additionally, I was surprised to see a subtle shift in the desires I had for my future. Before this year, I would have told you that I wanted to be an L&D or labor and delivery nurse, but now I'm finding a much deeper desire within myself to become a midwife. Like Maria said, I no longer want to be there for just those few hot moments at the end, but rather there to serve my whole patient through it all, and through maybe a period of infertility, and then conception, and then the whole 9 months of pregnancy, and then labor and delivery. Rather than knowing my patient for only a brief period of time, like Heather Barber, a postnatal RN I interviewed and shadowed, does, I want to be more engaged in a family's story and build a stronger rapport with them. After shadowing and interviewing Mrs. Barber, she told me that as a postnatal nurse, you don't really work with moms and babies for a long time. Usually it's just one day. but you do still get to know them and get a connection with them. This hadn't been the answer I was looking for. As much as I loved shadowing her that day and would totally do it again, I was bothered by how short the interactions were between patient and nurse. She had 4 couplets at the time, which is what they call a mom and baby pair, and she made rounds between them all day. I didn't like how brief the interactions were, and this really bothered me. Now, granted, I only observed half of a 12-hour shift, so I can't say definitively that interpersonal relationships can't or don't happen between a postnatal RN, but because I do believe that they do. But it did help me further discern what it is that I wanted, which is to journey with my patient for a longer period of time than a shift or 2. Still, shadowing Mrs. Barber gave me a much deeper respect for the nurses who work for moms in the hospital setting, because what they do is hard and we need them. Yet because L&D nurses work in similar fast-paced environments with a fast turnover of patients, I decided that midwifery was definitely a better end goal for me. Maria said it best. One thing I like about being a midwife is that it's not becoming their family, but becoming their friend in a way and being with them through such an exciting time. When it all comes down to it, I want to build a stronger relationship of service between my patient and me so that they feel comfortable trusting me. That's it. In January, I was also incredibly blessed with the opportunity to observe a home birth. My feelings regarding midwifery were solidified. Good friends from our parish were expecting their 9th baby, and they gave me the enormous privilege and opportunity to observe the birth. It was hands down one of the most beautiful things that I've ever witnessed, and I'm not just saying that. I didn't want to leave because the love had become so palpable, and it's actually kind of funny because my dad had to end up texting me at around 11 p.m. to tell me that because I wasn't their immediate family, I shouldn't stay too long. Now, birth is notorious for the excruciating pain and discomfort involved, and while that is still a very real part of birth, it isn't the only piece. What made this experience so beautiful for me was the unique way that the mother and midwife coped through the pain together. Clarice's pain wasn't discredited, but it wasn't focused on or exaggerated either. Because of this, the magnificence of birth was able to be fully appreciated. Rather than portraying delivery as a process to be afraid of, Clarice and Gina, the midwife, portrayed it as a process which women's bodies are made to do. Clarice embodied Proverbs 31:25, which states, "Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come." Her true grit and courage became so obvious to me in those moments, and I can't wait to be a mom like her one day. Christ's intelligent design and the newness and beauty of his creation became so perfectly clear. This new baby clasped in Clarice's arms was so flawless, so perfect, and yet her world was one big unknown. Noticing this brought a lot of closure to some lessons God has taught me this year. Most people know that I've always struggled trusting in God and his divine plan for my life. This lack of trust has bled into my prayer life, my relationships, and especially my decision making. And just like Beatrice, my life unfolding before me was one big unknown, and I was quite scared. I didn't know what college I was going to attend or what this next big step would look like, and it stressed me out. It took me a while before I finally had enough courage to open my hands to God's almighty plan for my life. And once I did this, I could clearly, everything began falling into place. God was clearly telling me that he understood why I was afraid, but he wasn't my enemy. Sure enough, everything about the University of Mary I visited felt like home, and there was one green light after the next. Not only was it the most affordable of the colleges I was looking into, but it offered an early assurance program that has accepted me into the nursing program as a high school senior, so now I won't have to apply sophomore year of college. And senior year nursing students are tuition free. On top of that, my Capstone experience had been going well, and I felt that all the experiences I had were tailored specifically for me. The midwife I interviewed knew exactly where I was coming from, even though I hadn't told her anything about myself prior. Bella Natural Women's Care, which is a pro-life medical clinic I served at, whose mission is to embrace the dignity of women by promoting healing and wellness through a natural and scientific approach with sincere compassion for life, cared deeply for me and the dreams I was pursuing, and the home birth moved me in ways I can't even begin to explain. I have learned so much about myself and our Lord through this Capstone experience. I conclude this year with a full assurance that midwifery is what I want to do with my life. God has led me through a very challenging year, and I firmly believe him when he says in Isaiah 41:10, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, I will help you, and I will uphold you with my right hand." The theme of letting go and letting God sounds cliche, and I've always rolled my eyes over this phrase whenever people would tell me. But it's truly what this year and this capstone has taught me. It's been a difficult year where I'll try to control my life until he lovingly reminds me that relinquishing control of my present and future will bring me the most happiness. And although this is a constant battle I'll be facing for the rest of my life, I truly believe that holding things with open hands rather than clenched fists will bring me the most joy and peace. My capstone experience and my whole senior year really has been inspired by the words of St. John Paul the Great, which says, "I plead with you, never ever give up on hope. Never doubt, never tire, and never become discouraged. Be not afraid." I hope that my fellow seniors who are moving on to bigger and better things will never forget what it is that you want, so that you may use your God-given talents for his glory. And for you juniors, I pray that you are not afraid to step into a leadership role that we are now leaving behind, and granted, we haven't done such a great job of, and that you may rely on our Lord for your decisions looming ahead. And for everyone else, I encourage you to pursue what you love most with reckless abandon, knowing and believing that just as Christ has led me here, he too will lead you to where you are called to be. And he will not lead you astray. The word midwife means to be with women. And although that's my calling and not necessarily all of yours, I pray that the same message might be true for you, that you may be with our Lord through it all, because ultimately that's what matters most. Thank you.